Good morning everyone. This is our next video in our geometry series that we're doing for this module for while we're home, and today we're going to focus on area of trapezoids. So previously we reviewed area of parallelograms and we reviewed area of triangles. So today we're just going to review the area of trapezoids. So what you see up here is I actually have the formula, which is area is 1/2 the height times base 1 plus base 2. But what I actually want to do is, I typically do this when we do trapezoids, I kind of want to explain the formula before we get into just doing examples, because I like you to understand why the formula works the way it does. So if you see here, we have the height, which is very similar to the height that we saw in triangles and parallelograms. It's just meeting the base at a right angle. And then we have base 1 and base 2. So one thing I will tell you is base 1 and base 2 are always going to be the sides that are parallel to each other. So for instance, this side and this side right here would not be base 1 and base 2, because eventually if you continued those lines they would meet. So no matter which way the trapezoid is sitting, the sides that are parallel to each other are the bases. Now let me go into why this is actually just kind of using the parallelogram formula. So if you guys remember, the parallelogram formula was base times height. So I want you to imagine if you were using a computer, okay, and you had this picture and you could kind of right click on different pieces of this trapezoid. So for instance, imagine you took this line that's base 1, okay, imagine you right clicked on it and hit copy, and then you pasted it right down here. And I'm going to try to draw a line that's about the same size, and I'm going to label this base 1, okay, and then if you did the exact same thing, you went to base 2 down here and you right clicked on it and you hit copy and then you paste it up here, okay, and I'm going to label this base 2, and then if you connected the two of those, what you see here is actually what we now have is we have one large parallelogram where base 1 and base 2 together are actually the base of this big parallelogram. So that's why we have that base 1 plus base 2. It's because it's actually just the base of this big parallelogram we make. And then the height is just exactly the same. But since we actually only want to find the area of that initial trapezoid, we only need to have 1/2 the area of that whole parallelogram, because really all we want is we want this area right here. So that's when I said, you know, the area formula for a trapezoid is actually kind of just the area formula for a parallelogram, and then we just get it in half, because when you put two trapezoids together and you kind of flip them like you just saw what I did there, you actually just make one large parallelogram. But again, we want just the area of that initial trapezoid, okay? So, okay, a few reminders. So the area formula is 1/2 the height times base 1 plus base 2, and the bases are always going to be the sides that are parallel to each other. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually do this formula and do some examples where you see this. So if you see here, we have three sides that are labeled with measurements, okay? And just like we talked about with triangles and parallelograms, the base and height always meet at a right angle. So if you guys see, we have our right angle right here. So area is 1/2 times the height. So I'm going to put that in parentheses. The height is the distance between the two bases. And again, this 15-meter side and 8-meter side are parallel to each other. So since they are the sides that are parallel to each other, those are going to be the two bases. So the height is 9. So 1/2 times 9 times base 1 plus base 2. So base 1 plus base 2 here would be 23, because 8 plus 15 is 23. So now what you need to do is, you guys can use your calculator just like we've been talking about. You're going to multiply 1/2 times 9 times 23. Now again, just as a reminder, you know, if you want to use, you know, the decimal version of 1/2, you could also just do 5/10 times 9 times 23. Alright, so either way, that works and that's fine. So go ahead and multiply those out. Alright, our area for this one should be 103.5 meters squared. Okay? Alright, let's go to our next example. All right, so here we have another trapezoid, okay? Again, we have the bases are parallel to each other, so the only two sides of this trapezoid that are parallel to each other is 4 and 9. And then our height is the distance between those, which is 5. So I'm going to do 1/2 times the height, which is 5, times base 1 plus base 2, so 4 plus 9 would give me 13. We have 32.5 centimeters squared. And again, if you want to use 0.5 instead of 1/2, that's fine, if that's easier for you to type into the calculator. All right, here's our next one. Now, here's an example where a lot of times when we talk about base 1 and base 2, students kind of get confused when they look at this because, again, when we talked about this with the triangles, when you see or you think of the word base, you think bottom. Well, if you look at this side here and this side here, these are not parallel to each other. These sides would, if you continued these lines, would eventually meet. So these are not the bases. The bases have to be parallel to each other. So the only two sides that are parallel to each other are 4 and 13. The distance between those two is 7, so that is the height of the trapezoid. Okay, so the height doesn't always have to be straight up and down, it just has to meet the bases at a right angle. So again, we're going to fill in our formula here. So I'm going to use 0.5 for 1/2 times the height, which is 7, times base 1 plus base 2, which is 17. Alright, and we end up with 59.5 yards squared. Alright, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to give you guys a few examples that you can try on your own. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to pause and use the formula, find the height and the two bases, and then fill in the formula, and then come up with your area. So pause here and solve for yourself. Alright, so for this one we have 1/2 times the height. So the height has to be the thing that connects to the bases at a right angle, and the only two sides that are parallel to each other here are 7 and 15. So that would make 15 the height, because it meets those at a right angle. And base 1 plus base 2, 22. So area would equal 165 meters squared. Alright, same thing for this one. You guys see the trapezoid here. Okay, so identify your height and your bases. Alright, and so I want you guys to pause and try this one on your own. Alright, so for this one, the distance between the bases is 10, so that's the height. And the sum of base 1 plus base 2, 9 plus 16 is 25. Okay, so now we need to multiply 1/2 times 10 times 25, which would give you 125 feet squared. Okay, so for this last one here, they don't actually give you the picture. So what I want you guys to do with this one is read the description here and just draw the picture. Now, I'm not even necessarily worried if your picture is drawn to scale or not, so just draw a sketch of a trapezoid and fill in the information based on what you see there. Alright, so go ahead and give this a try. Draw the trapezoid first and then find the area. So I'm going to ask you to pause and complete that on your own. Alright, so first thing you should do anytime you have a description of a visual but they don't give you the visual is draw a picture of the visual. So again, I'm not tremendously worried if this is drawn to scale or not. I just want something where you can actually have an idea of where the numbers would go in this trapezoid. So I'm just going to draw this trapezoid right here. All right, I'm going to say we have 7 up here, we have 8 down here, and then we have a height of 5.2 inches. So Once we draw that description, we can actually, or draw that picture, we can actually just now fill in the formula. So 1/2, or 0.5, times the height, which is 5 2/10, and base 1 plus base 2. Well, we have base 1 is 7, base 2 is 8. So we add those two together, we get 15. So now you multiply all the way through. Alright, we end up with 39 5/10, and then inches squared. Okay guys, so there'll be a assignment on campus on area of trapezoids, so you guys can kind of use this video and watch it as you're doing it, or if you don't need to, you could just go ahead and go right to the assignment. Alright, I've been saying this for all these videos, but I hope you guys are staying healthy and staying safe, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Alright, there will be one more video in the geometry series, and you'll see that, and that will be on area of composite figures. Alright everybody, talk to you later.